inherited a part of the Buddha Dharma. Then Raputra, wanting to elaborate this meaning, spoke again in verse. When I heard the words of this Dharma, experiencing something unprecedented. 47. 10c. My heart overflowed with joy, and I was rid of all my doubts. From long ago, ever since I heard the teaching of the Buddha, I have not lost the Mahayana. The words of the Buddhas are extremely rare, and are capable of ridding sentient beings of their suffering. Although I had already attained freedom from corruption by hearing the Buddha's voice, I have also been rid of my anxiety. Whether I was dwelling in mountain valleys or under forest trees, whether I was sitting or walking, grieving and blaming myself deeply, I thought incessantly, how have I deceived myself? I am also the heir of the Buddhas, having entered the same incorruptible Dharma. Nevertheless, in the future, I shall not be able to explain the highest path. The golden color, the 32 marks, the 10 powers, and the liberations are all in the same Dharma, and yet I have not attained any of these. Moreover, such qualities as the 80 excellent and 18 special characteristics are completely lost to me. When I was wandering alone, I saw the Buddha in the great assembly, filling the 10 directions with his fame, and greatly benefiting sentient beings. I then thought, the Lotus Sutra. 48. 11 a.m. Chapter 3. 49. I have lost all these benefits, because I have been deceiving myself. I thought about this constantly day and night, and wanted to ask the Bhagavat, have I or have I not lost these? I always saw the Bhagavat praising the Bodhisattvas. That is why I pondered over such matters as these both day and night. Now I have heard the words of the Buddha, explaining to sentient beings the incorruptible Dharma, which is difficult to comprehend, and making them enter the terrace of enlightenment. Formerly, I was attached to false views, and was a teacher of Brahmins. The Bhagavat, knowing my mind, removed the false views and taught nirvana. I got rid of false views completely, and attained the teaching of emptiness. At that time I considered myself to have attained nirvana. But now I have become aware that this was not the real nirvana. When I become a Buddha, I shall be endowed with the 32 marks, and be honored by devas, humans, yakas, and ngas. Only then can it be said that I have permanently attained nirvana without residue. Before the great assembly, the Buddha has proclaimed that I will become a Buddha. After hearing these words of the Dharma, I was immediately rid of all my doubts. When I heard this teaching of the Buddhas, I was greatly startled and thought, I wonder if Mra, acting like the Buddha, is confusing me. But the Buddha, who teaches skillfully, by means of various explanations and illustrations, has made my mind tranquil like the ocean. While listening to him, I was freed from the web of my doubts. The Buddha has said that immeasurable Buddhas, who have attained parinirvana in the past, established in the use of skillful means, have also taught this Dharma. Immeasurable Buddhas in the present and future will also teach this Dharma with various skillful means. The present Bhagavat, from the time he was born and renounced household life, until he obtained the path, and turned the wheel of the Dharma, has also taught through skillful means. The Bhagavat teaches the real path, but the wicked one does not. Therefore I know definitely that it was not Mra acting like the Buddha, because I fell into a web of doubt. I thought that Mra was impersonating the Buddha. When I heard the voice of the Buddha, profound and very subtle, fluently explaining the pure Dharma, I became full of great joy. The Lotus Sutra 50. 11b. My doubts are completely and forever exhausted, and I have achieved the true wisdom. I will definitely become a Buddha, honored by devas and humans. I will turn the wheel of the highest Dharma, and lead and inspire the Bodhisattvas. At that time the Buddha said to Raputra, I will now reveal to you, before the great assembly of devas, humans, RMRs, and Brahmins, that in the past, in the presence of 200,000 kois of Buddhas, I led and inspired you constantly for the sake of the highest path. You have followed my instructions for a long time, because I led you with skillful means. You were born in my Dharma. O Raputra! In the past I inspired you to seek the Buddha path. Yet just now you had completely forgotten this and considered yourself to have attained nirvana. Now, because I want you to remember the path that you practiced according to your original vow in the past, I will teach the IA with Macron. Vaka S. The Mahayana Sutra called the Lotus Sutra, the instruction for the Bodhisattvas and treasured law of the Buddhas. O Raputra! In the future, after immeasurable, limitless, and inconceivable kalpas, you will have paid homage to thousands of myriads of kois of Buddhas, preserved the true Dharma, and mastered the path practiced by the Bodhisattvas. You will become a Buddha called Padmaprabha, a Tath Gate, Arat, completely enlightened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, well departed, knower of the world, unsurpassed, tamer of humans, teacher of devas and humans, Buddha, Bhagavat. Your land will be called Viraja. Its earth will be level and pure, ornamented, peaceful, and rich. The devas and humans will prosper. The earth will be made of lapis lazuli with a well-planned network of roads like a chess board bordered with golden cords. Rows of 7 jeweled trees, which are always full of flowers and fruits, will line the borders of these roads. The Tath Gate Padmaprabha will also lead and inspire sentient beings by means of the 3 vehicles. O Raputra! When that Buddha appears, even though his will not be a troubled world, he will teach the 3 vehicles because of his original vow. Chapter 3. 51. This kalpa will be called Maratna Pratimata, meaning adorned with great jewels. Why will it be called Maratna Pratimata? Because in that world the Bodhisattvas will be like great jewels. The number of these Bodhisattvas will be immeasurable, limitless, inconceivable, and beyond all comparison, known only by those with the power of the Buddha's wisdom. When they want to walk they will step on jeweled oars. And these Bodhisattvas will not be those who are just setting out. Over a long time they will have planted roots of good merit and practiced the pure path of discipline and integrity in the presence of immeasurable hundreds of thousands of myriads of kois of Buddhas. They will always be praised by the Buddhas and continually practice the Buddha wisdom. They will be endowed with transcendent powers and know well all the teachings of the Dharma. They will be honest, without falsity, and are in recollection. That world will be led with bodhisattvas like these. O Raputra! The lifespan of this Buddha Padmaprabha will be 12 intermediate kalpas, not including the period after he becomes a prince and before he becomes a Buddha, and the lifespan of the people in that world will be 8 intermediate kalpas. After these 12 intermediate kalpas have passed, the Tathagata Padmaprabha will predict Bodhisattvadti Pariprayas attainment of highest, complete enlightenment and will address the monks, saying, "This Bodhisattvadti Paripra will become the next Buddha after me. His name will be Padmavabhavikrama, a Tathagata, Arat, completely enlightened. His Buddha world will also be like this one. O Raputra! After the parinirva of the Buddha Padmaprabha, the true Dharma will remain in the world for 32 intermediate kalpas and the semblance Dharma will also remain in the world for 32 intermediate kalpas." Then the Bhagavat, wanting to elaborate on the meaning of this again, spoke these verses. O Raputra! In the future, you will become a Buddha of universal wisdom, named Padmaprabha, who will save innumerable sentient beings. The Lotus Sutra 52. 11c. Having paid homage to innumerable Buddhas, perfected the Bodhisattva practice, and the qualities, including the 10 powers, you will attain the highest path. After immeasurable kalpas have passed, the kalpa will be called Prabhshtaratna, and the world will be called Viraja, pure and without dirt. The earth will be made of lapis lazuli, and the roads, bordered with golden cords, will be lined with variegated trees of the 7 treasures, which are always full of flowers and fruits. The bodhisattvas in that world will be always in recollection. All of them will be completely endowed with transcendent powers and the perfections, and will have properly practiced the bodhisattva path. In the presence of innumerable Buddhas, such mahasattvas as these will be led and inspired by the Buddha Padmaprabha. When this Buddha becomes a prince, he will abdicate his kingship and give up his worldly fame. Bearing his last body, he will renounce household life and attain the path of the Buddha. This Buddha Padmaprabha will live in the world for 12 intermediate kalpas, and the lifespan of the people in this world will be 8 intermediate kalpas. After the parinirva of this Buddha, the true Dharma will last in the world for 32 intermediate kalpas, during which time many sentient beings will be saved. Chapter 3. 53. 12 am. After the extinction of the true Dharma, the semblance Dharma will last for 32 intermediate kalpas. The relics of the Buddha will be distributed widely, and devas and humans will pay them homage. All that the Buddha Padmaprabha does will be exactly like this. That very best of humans, who will be foremost and without comparison, is none other than you. You should be delighted to hear this. At that time the fourfold assembly of monks, nuns, laymen, and lay women and the great assembly of devas, ngas, yakas, gandharvas, asuras, garuas, kinaras, and mauragas saw Raputra receive his prediction of highest, complete enlightenment in the presence of the Buddha. They rejoiced greatly and became immeasurably happy. All of them removed their outer garments and proffered them to the Buddha as offerings. Sakra, the Lord of Deva S, and Brahma, together with innumerable Deva Putra S also made offerings to the Buddha of their heavenly beautiful garments, heavenly Mdravaoas, and great Mdravaoas. Their heavenly garments floated and uttered in the air, while in the sky the Deva S played hundreds of thousands of myriads of kinds of music together at one time. They rained down various heavenly oas and said, in the past the Buddha turned the wheel of the Dharma for the RST time in VA with Macron A with Macron as. Now he has turned the wheel of the utmost and greatest Dharma again. Thereupon the Devaputtas spoke these verses in order to explain this. Again, in the past you turned the wheel of the Dharma, of the Four Noble Truths in Vras, and you illuminated and explained the Dharma, of the origination and extinction of the VE aggregates. You have now again turned the wheel, of the subtlest, utmost, and greatest Dharma. The Lotus Sutra. 54. This Dharma is extremely profound. Only a few will be able to believe it. Since long ago we have frequently heard the teaching of the Bhagavat. Yet we have never before heard such a profound and supreme teaching. When the Bhagavat taught this Dharma, we were all delighted. And now Raputra, possessed of great wisdom, has received his prediction from the Bhagavat. In the same way, we too shall certainly become Buddhas. We shall become peerless, unrivaled in all the world. The path of the Buddha, which is difficult to understand, is taught with skillful means, according to what is appropriate for sentient beings. May the merits of our beneficial acts, whether of the past or the present, and those acquired in meeting the Buddha, be completely transferred to the Buddha path. At that time Raputra said this to the Buddha, O Bhagavat, I now have no further doubts. I have received the prediction of the highest supreme enlightenment in the presence of the Buddha. When all those 1200 who have attained complete mental discipline were still under training in the past, the Buddha constantly led and inspired them, saying, My teaching overcomes birth, old age, illness, and death, and it leads to nirvana. Both those who were still in training and those who were not thought that they were free from false views about the self, existence and non-existence, and declared that they had attained nirvana. Yet now, in the presence of the Bhagavat, they have heard what they have never heard before and have fallen into doubt. Splendid, O Bhagavat! I entreat you to explain to the fourfold asm BLY the reason why, and free them from their doubts. Chapter 3. 55. 12b. Then the Buddha said to Raputra, Did I not previously tell you that all the Buddha Bhagavats explain the Dharma with various explanations and illustrations using skillful means, all for the sake of highest, complete enlightenment? All of these teachings are for leading and inspiring the Bodhisattvas. Moreover, Raputra, I will now clarify what I mean with illustrations. Those with wisdom will be able to understand through these illustrations. O Raputra! Suppose there were an aged and extremely affluent man, either in a town, city, or country, who has immeasurable wealth, abundant estates, mansions, and servants. He has a spacious house, yet it only has a single entrance. Suppose many people live there, as many as 1, 2, or even 100 people. The buildings are in poor repair, the fences and walls are crumbling, the pillar bases are rotten, and the beams and frame work are dangerously tilted. Suddenly and unexpectedly, rest break out everywhere, setting the house swiftly on. The children of this man, 10, 20, or 30 in number, are in the house. The affluent man, seeing the RE breaking out everywhere, becomes alarmed and terrified. He thinks, I am capable of escaping through the burning entrance in safety, but my children are absorbed in play within the burning house and are not aware of the RE, do not know, are not alarmed or terrified, and the RE is approaching them. They are not troubled about their suffering, nor do they intend to leave the house. O Raputra, this affluent man thought, since I am still physically strong, I could take the children out of the house in the folds of my garment or on top of a desk. He further thought, there is only one entrance to this house and it is very narrow. The children, who are immature and still unaware, are attached to their place of play. They may fall into danger and be burned by the RE. I should now tell them of the danger. This house is already burning. They must escape as quickly as they can to avoid being burned by the RE. The Lotus Sutra 56. After considering this, he urged the children according to his thought. Children, run out immediately. Although their father in his concern has given them the proper advice, the children are immersed in their play and do not accept it. They are neither alarmed nor afraid and have no intention of leaving the burning house. Moreover, they do not even know what a RE is, the condition of the house, or what they may lose. They merely run about, back and forth, looking at their father. Thereupon the affluent man thought, this house is already engulfed in ums. If my children and I do not get out, we shall perish in the RE. I will now use skillful means to help my children escape from this disaster. Since the father already knew that his children were attached to various rare toys and unusual things that each of them liked, he said to them, the toys you are fond of are rare and hard to obtain. If you do not take them, you will certainly regret it later. Right now, outside the house, there are 3 kinds of carts. One is yoked to a sheep, one to a deer, and one to an ox. Go play with them. Children, run out of this burning house immediately and I will give you whatever you want. The children, hearing what their father had said about the rare toys, became excited and, in their eagerness to get to them, they pushed each other out of the way in a mad rush out of the burning house. Then the affluent man saw that his children had got out safely and were sitting unharmed in an open area at a crossroad. He was relieved, happy, and joyful. The children said to their father, Father, please give us the toys you promised, those 3 carts, 1 yoked to a sheep, 1 to a deer, and 1 to an ox. O Raputra, the affluent man then gave each child the same kind of large cart. These carts were tall and spacious, adorned with various jewels, and encircled with railings full of hanging bells. On the tops of the carts were canopies also decorated with various kinds of jewels. These carts were draped. Chapter 3. 57. 12c. With jeweled cords and hung with garlands. They were thickly piled with fabrics, and red pillows had been placed about. These carts were each yoked to an ox with a spotlessly white hide. These oxen had beautiful bodies with powerful muscles, even gaits, and were as swift as the wind, and there were many attendants guarding them. Why did the affluent man give these carts. Because the man had great and immeasurable wealth and his abundant storehouses were full. He thus thought further. Since my treasure has no limit, I should not give my children inferior carts. These are my children and I love them all equally. I have an immeasurable number of large carts such as these, decorated with the 7 treasures. I should equally distribute them to each child without discrimination. Why is this? Even if I gave carts like these to every one in the country, their number would not be exhausted. Why should I not give them to my own children? At that time, the children each climbed into a great cart and had an unprecedented experience, one beyond their original expectations. O Raputra! What do you think about this? This affluent man gave to his children equally a large cart decorated with precious treasures. Has he deceived them or not? Raputra replied, No, Bhagavat. The affluent man only tried to help his children escape from the disastrous age. He saved their lives and did not deceive them. This is by no means a deception. Why? Because by saving their lives they obtained marvelous toys. Moreover, they were saved from the burning house by skillful means. O Bhagavat! If this affluent man had not given them even the smallest cart, it still would not have been a deception. Why is this? Because this affluent man thought before. I will help my children escape with skillful means. This is why it was not a deception. How much more so, since the affluent man, knowing that he had immeasurable wealth and wanting to benay them equally, gave each of his children a large ox cart. The Buddha said to Raputra, Splendid, splendid. It is exactly as you have said. O Raputra, the Tathagata is also just like this. That is to say, as the Lotus Sutra 58. 13. The Father of the entire world, he permanently dispels fear, distress, anxiety, ignorance, and blindness. He has attained immeasurable wisdom, insight, power, and fearlessness, as well as great transcendent powers and the power of wisdom. He has attained the perfection of skillful means and of wisdom. With his great mercy and compassion he incessantly and indefatigably seeks the welfare of all beings and benets them all. The Tathagata appears in the triple world, which is like a decaying old house on earth, to rescue sentient beings from the eye of birth, old age, illness, and death, anxiety, sorrow, suffering, distress, delusion, blindness, and the 3 poisons of greed, hatred, and ignorance. Thus he leads and inspires sentient beings and causes them to attain highest, complete enlightenment. The Tathagatas see all sentient beings burning in the eye of birth, old age, illness, and death, anxiety, sorrow, suffering, and distress. Because of the desires of the VE senses and the desire for monetary profit, they also experience various kinds of suffering. Because of their attachment and pursuits, they experience various kinds of suffering in the present, and in the future they will suffer in the states of existence of hell, animals, and hungry ghosts, pretas. If they are born in the heavens or in the human world, they will experience a variety of sorrows such as suffering from poverty and destitution, separation from loved ones, or suffering from encounters with those they dislike. Although sentient beings are immersed in such sorrows, they rejoice and play. They are not aware, shocked, startled, or disgusted, nor do they seek release. Running around in the burning house of the triple world, they experience great suffering and yet they do not realize it. O Raputra! Seeing these things, the Buddha thought, since I am the father of sentient beings, I must rid them of their immeasurable suffering and distress. I will cause them to rejoice through the immeasurable and limitless pleasure of the Buddha wisdom. O Raputra! The Tathagata further thought, if I proclaim the Tathagata's wisdom, insight, power, and fearlessness to sentient beings with my transcendent powers and the power of my wisdom alone, without using skillful means, it will be impossible to. Chapter 3. 59. 13b. Save them. Why is this? Because these sentient beings have not escaped from birth, old age, illness, and death, anxiety, sorrow, suffering, and distress, and are being burned in the blazing house of the triple world. How would they be able to understand the Buddha's wisdom? O Raputra! Although that affluent man had physical strength, he did not use it. He only earnestly employed skillful means to save his children from the disaster of the burning house, and later he gave each of them a large cart decorated with precious treasures. The Tathagata is exactly like this. Although the Tathagata has power and fearlessness, he does not use them, but rescues sentient beings from the burning house of the triple world. Only through wisdom and skillful means, teaching the three vehicles to the Avakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and the Buddhas, saying, do not take pleasure in living in this burning house of the triple world. And do not thirst after inferior objects, sounds, smells, others, and tangibles. If you are attached to these objects and have desires, then you will be burned. Leave the triple world in haste and you will obtain the three vehicles, the vehicles for the Avakas, Pratyekabuddhas, and Buddhas. I definitely guarantee this to you. In the end it will come true. You should be diligent and persistent. The Tathagata attracts sentient beings through this skillful means, saying further, you should know that the noble ones praise the teachings of these three vehicles that are self-directed, unrestricted, and independent. When they ride in them, sentient beings will enjoy faculties free from corruption and also powers, paths to enlightenment, meditation, liberation, and concentration. And they themselves will attain immeasurable ease and pleasure. O Raputra! Those beings, wise by nature, who accept the Dharma from the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent, persistent, and wish to escape from the triple world quickly, and who are seeking nirvana, are all practicing the Avaka vehicle. They are like those children who left the burning house seeking the cart yoked to a sheep. The Lotus Sutra. 60. Those beings who accept the Dharma of the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent and persevere in seeking the wisdom of the self-generated one, and enjoy tranquility for themselves, who profoundly know the causes of and reasons for existence, are all practicing the Pratyekabuddha vehicle. They are just like those children who left the burning house seeking the cart yoked to a deer. Those beings who accept the Dharma of the Buddha Bhagavat, who are diligent and persevere in seeking the wisdom of the Omniscient One, the wisdom of the Buddha, the wisdom of the self-generated one, the wisdom acquired without a teacher, the wisdom and insight, powers, and fearlessness of the Tathagata, who are compassionate, put immeasurable sentient beings at ease, B'nai Devas and humans, and save all beings, are all ticking the Mahayana. Bodhisattvas are called Mahattvas, great beings, because they seek this vehicle. They are just like those children who left the burning house seeking the cart yoked to an ox. O Raputra! That affluent man saw his children leave the burning house safely and arrive at a safe place. Knowing that he had immeasurable wealth, he gave a large cart equally to each child. The Tathagata is exactly like this. As the father of all sentient beings, he sees that immeasurable thousands of kois of sentient beings escape from the dangers, sufferings, and fears of the triple world through the gates of the Buddha's teaching and attain the pleas you of nirvana. Then the Tathagata thought, because I possess the treasure house of the Dharma of all the Buddhas, which contains immeasurable limitless wisdom, power, and fearlessness, and because all sentient beings are my children, I will give them equally the Mahayana. I will not allow anyone to attain nirvana merely for himself, but will cause everyone to attain it through the Tathagata's nirvana. I will give sentient beings who have escaped from the triple world all the toys of the Buddha's meditations and liberations, which are of one character and one kind, are praised by the noble ones, and which produce pure and supreme pleasure. O Raputra! At Rst that affluent man attracted his children with 3 kinds of carts, then later gave them only the safest and best large ox cart. Chapter 3. 61. 13c. Adorned with jewels. Moreover, that affluent man was never accused of telling a lie. The Tathagata is exactly like this. He tells no lies. In the beginning the Tathagata teaches the 3 vehicles in order to lead sentient beings, and later he saves them through only the Mahayana. Why is this? Because the Tathagata possesses the treasure house of the Dharma, which contains immeasurable wisdom, power, and fearlessness. And although he is able to give the teaching of the Mahayana to all sentient beings, not all of them can accept it. O Raputra! You should know that the Buddhas, with the power of skillful means, teach the single Buddha vehicle, dividing and teaching it as 3. Then the Buddha, wanting to elaborate on the meaning of this again, spoke these verses. Suppose there were an affluent man who had a large house, and this house was very old, on the verge of collapsing. The halls were extremely dangerous. The pillar bases rotten and disintegrating. The beams and framework dangerously tilted. And the stairways were falling apart. The fences and walls were cracked. The plaster was peeling off. The thatched roof was falling down. The rafters and eaves were coming apart. The partitions were everywhere askew. And the whole place was covered with LTH. 500 people lived there. And moving around helter-skelter were kites, owls, hawks, eagles, crows, magpies, doves, pigeons, lizards, snakes, vipers, scorpions, centipedes, millipedes, newts, myriapods, ferrets, badgers, mice, rats, and other harmful creatures. The Lotus Sutra. 62. It was LLED with stench. And there were places overflowing with excrement. All kinds of bugs had gathered there. There were foxes, wolves, and vermin, devouring, trampling, and gnawing on corpses, scattering bones and ish about. And a pack of dogs, forcing each other out of the way. rushed to the spot. Frightened and exhausted from hunger, they were searching everywhere for food. Fighting among themselves, snatching at food. Biting, snarling, and barking at each other. This house was terrifying. Corrupted to this grotesque condition. Ogres of the mountains and valleys, yakas, and demons were everywhere, devouring human-ish. There were various poisonous insects, all kinds of harmful birds of prey, and beasts who were producing, rearing, and protecting their offspring. Yakas were scrabbling and gting to devour them. And after sating themselves, evil thoughts would arise in them. The sound of their gting was terrifying. The Kama demons were crouching on the ground, sometimes rising up a foot or two, roaming about, pleasing themselves as they liked. They would catch 2 legs of a dog, beat it until it could not bark, and grabbing the dog's neck with their legs, terrify it for their own amusement. Chapter 3. 63. 14. There were also other demons living there, with large bodies, naked, dark, and gaunt. They were screaming horrifying howls, crying out while searching for food. Other demons were there, some with needle-like throats, while others had necks like a cow's head. Some had those of human-ish eaters or dog devourers. Their hair was disheveled like rank weeds, and they were destructive and malicious. Driven by hunger and thirst, they were crying and scurrying about. Yakas, hungry ghosts, and various malicious birds and beasts were peering out of the windows, and running frantically in all directions, driven by hunger. In this house, with its immeasurable terrors, there were many such horrendous things as these. Now suppose this old and decaying house belonged to a man, and this man came out from it a short distance. Soon after, the house suddenly burst into flames behind him. The eye instantly spread in all directions. The frame, beams, rafters, and pillars exploded, and shaking, split and crashed, while the fences and walls collapsed. All the demons screamed out loudly. The hawks, eagles, other birds, and Kama demons, panicked and terrored, could not get out. Malicious beasts and poisonous insects concealed themselves in holes. The Lotus Sutra. 64. There were also picker demons dwelling there, who, because of little merit, were chased by the flames. They were tearing at each other, drinking blood and eating ish. A horde of vermin had already died off, and the large malicious beasts raced to devour them, while the smoke of the stench owed and led everywhere, as the centipedes, millipedes, and poisonous snakes rushed, burning, out of their holes. The Kama demons devoured them, one after another. The hungry ghosts, with their hair on eye, ravenous, thirsty, and suffering from the heat, frantically scurried about. In this way, the house was extremely terrifying, with poison and eye, and disasters more than one. Then the householder, who was standing outside the entrance of the house, heard someone say, "Just a moment ago, in the midst of their play, your children entered this house. Being young and ignorant, they are attached to playing games." Hearing this, the affluent man was startled, and went into the burning house to save them from the disaster of the eye. As he thought, he warned the children, and explained the various dangers. Chapter 3. 65. 14b. There are malicious demons, poisonous insects. And the RE is raging everywhere. There are endless horrors. One right after another. There are poisonous snakes, lizards, vipers. Yakas, Kama demons, vermin. Foxes, dogs, hawks, eagles, kites. Owls, and centipedes, all acutely suffering from hunger and thirst. And all extremely terrifying. These horrors are difficult to deal with. How much more so the congregation. But the children, being ignorant, would not listen to their father's warning. Still attached to their games, they kept right on playing. Thereupon the affluent man thought, my children, by doing this, increase my distress. There is nothing to enjoy now in this house. Nevertheless, my children who are absorbed in play will not accept my instructions, and so will be hurt by the RE. Then he immediately thought that he should advise his children, using various skillful means, and said, I have a variety of unusual toys, such as any carts adorned with beautiful treasures, yoked to sheep, deer, and oxen. They are just outside the gate. O children, come out of the house. I had these carts made for you. Play with them as you like. The Lotus Sutra. 66. Hearing about these carts, the children immediately started to push each other out of the way, to get out of the house. Arriving at an open area, they escaped from the disaster. The affluent man, seeing that his children had escaped from the burning house, and were standing at the crossroads, sat down on his lion seat. Then he joyously said, now I am happy. It is extremely difficult to raise these children, foolish and ignorant. They entered a dangerous house, full of various poisonous insects, terrifying ogres from mountains and valleys, and a raging RE that broke out in all directions. In spite of this, these children were attached to playing their games. But by causing them to escape from the disaster, I have saved them. Therefore, my people, I now feel at ease. Thereupon the children, seeing their father sitting in peace, approached him saying, please, father, give us the 3 kinds of carts, adorned with treasures, that you just promised us, when you said that if we, your children, came out, you would give us 3 kinds of carts, just as we like. Chapter 3. 67. 14c. Now is the right time. Give them to us right away. This affluent man, who was extremely wealthy, had an abundance of treasures. He had a number of great carts made, adorned with various precious things, like gold, silver, lapis lazuli, mother of pearl, and agate. They were beautifully decorated, encircled with railings, and were covered with hanging bells, attached to golden cords. Over them was hung a net of pearls, with golden o'er tassels, hanging down everywhere. They were all completely decorated in a variety of colors. The bedding was made of soft silk, that was covered with an extremely any carpet of spotless white, which cost thousands of kois. There were large white oxen, healthy and powerful with beautiful bodies, yoked to the jeweled carts, and they were guarded by many attendants. When they were given these any carts, the children were joyful and excited. They got on the carts, and drove delightedly all about, amusing themselves in play. They mastered them without difficulties. The Buddha said to Raputra. The Lotus Sutra. 68. I am also like this. I am the Father of the world, the best of the sages. All sentient beings are my children. They are deeply attached to worldly pleasures, and have no wisdom. There is no peace in the triple world. Just like in the burning house, which is full of various suffering, and which is extremely terrifying. There are always the sufferings of birth, old age, illness, and death. Such res as these burn endlessly. The Tathagata, who has already left the burning house of the triple world, lives in tranquility, and dwells at ease in the forest. Now this triple world is my property, and the sentient beings in it are my children. There are now many dangers here, and I am the only one who can protect them. Although I give them advice, they do not accept it, because they are tainted with desires, and have deep attachments. On this occasion, I teach the three vehicles, using skillful means, realizing the sufferings of the triple world. I reveal and explain it, to cause sentient beings to escape from the mundane path. If these children are resolute, they are endowed with the three knowledges. Chapter 3. 69. 15a. And 6 transcendent powers. Or they can become Pratyekabuddhas or Bodhisattvas who have reached the stage of non-retrogression. O Raputra, I explain the single Buddha vehicle to sentient beings, using this illustration. If you are able to accept what I say, you will all attain the Buddha path. This vehicle is subtle, pure, and peerless. There is nothing superior to it in all the worlds. This is what the Buddha enjoys. All the sentient beings should praise, honor, and revere it. There are immeasurable thousands of koyas, of powers, liberations, meditations, wisdoms, and other attributes of the Buddha. I cause my children to obtain such a vehicle, and let them play continuously, day and night, for kalpas. I cause the Bodhisattvas as well as the Avakas to board this jeweled vehicle, and lead them directly to the terrace of enlightenment. For this reason, there is no other vehicle but the skillful means of the Buddhas. Even if one seeks in all the 10 directions, I tell you, O Raputra, all of you are my children, and I am thus your father. Since you were burned by the eye of various sufferings for many kalpas, I saved you all. The Lotus Sutra. 70. By leading you out of the triple world. Although I have previously told you about your parinirva, you have only extinguished birth and death, and have not actually attained nirvana. You should now seek only the wisdom of the Buddha. If there are any bodhisattvas in this assembly, they should listen single-mindedly to the real teaching of all the Buddhas. Those sentient beings whom the Buddha Bhagavats lead and inspire with skillful means are all bodhisattvas. Because people have little knowledge and are deeply attached to pleasures, I teach them the truth of suffering, i.e., the first noble truth. And those sentient beings rejoice, having attained such an unprecedented experience. The truth of suffering taught by the Buddha is nothing but the truth. To those who do not know the origin of suffering, i.e., the second noble truth, who are deeply attached to its causes, and unable to abandon them even for a while. I teach the truth about the path to its cessation, using skillful means. All the causes of suffering originate from excessive craving. When this craving is extinguished, the source is removed. The cessation of suffering is called the third, noble, truth. One practices the path leading to its cessation, i.e., the fourth noble truth. Chapter 3. 71. 15b. In order to attain the truth of cessation, removing the bonds of sufferings is called liberation. In what sense have these people attained liberation? They have merely removed false views, and called that liberation. But actually, they have not yet completely attained it. The Buddha has explained that these people have not actually attained nirvana. I do not intend to lead them to nirvana, because they have not yet attained the highest path. I am the Lord of the Dharma, and have mastered the Dharma. I appear in the world to cause sentient beings to be at peace. O, you, Ruputra, teach this my Dharma sign to Binay the world. Wherever you may go, never propagate it recklessly. You should know that those who hear, rejoice, and fully accept it have reached the stage of non-retrogression. Those who accept the teaching of this sutra have formerly seen the Buddhas in the past, honored and paid homage to them, and also heard this teaching. Those who are able to accept what you teach will see me, you, the monks and the bodhisattvas. This very Lotus Sutra shall be taught only to the profoundly wise. Those of superficial awareness who hear it will become confused and will not comprehend it. This sutra is beyond the comprehension of all the Avakas and Pratyekabuddhas. O, you, Ruputra. The Lotus Sutra. 72. Even you understood this sutra only through faith. It is no wonder that the other disciples cannot. They accept this sutra because they believe the Buddha's teaching, but it is beyond their intellectual comprehension. O Ruputra, never teach this sutra to those who are arrogant and lazy, or to those who hold false views about the self. Never teach it to those people of superficial awareness who are deeply attached to the desires of the VE senses, since even if they heard it, they would not understand. Those people who will not accept and who disparage this sutra will consequently destroy the seed of the Buddha in the entire world. Now listen to what I teach about the results of the errors of those people who frown upon and have doubts about this sutra. Listen also to what I teach concerning the results of the errors of those people who, whether at the time of the Buddha's presence in this world, or after his parinirvana, disparage this sutra, and despise, hate, and hold grudges against the people who recite, copy, and preserve it. When such people die, they will go to the Unofficial hell, and after spending a kalpa there, will be born in the same way, again and again for innumerable kalpas. Chapter 3. 73. 15c. After coming out of this hell, they will be reborn as animals. If born as dogs or vermin, their bodies will be emaciated, dark-spotted, devoid of hair, with scabies and leprosy, tormented, hated, and despised by people. They will constantly suffer from hunger and thirst, with withered bones and dish. They will be in anguish while living, and covered with stones after death, because they destroyed the seed of the Buddha. They will suffer the consequences of their errors. If they are born as camels or mules, they will always have heavy burdens to carry. They will be whipped repeatedly, and think of nothing but water and grass. It is because they disparaged this sutra that they suffer the consequences of their errors in this way. If they are born as vermin and enter a village, children will beat them because they have scabies, leprosy, and perhaps a missing eye. At times they will be tortured even to death. After dying, they will be reborn as giant snakes, with great bodies as long as ve-100 yojanas. Deaf, dumb, legless, slithering on their bellies, eaten at by small insects. They will suffer day and night without respite. They suffer the consequences of their errors in this way, because they disparaged this sutra. If they are born as humans, they will have dull faculties, and be runts who twitch and are crippled. The Lotus Sutra. 74. Blind, deaf, and humpbacked. No matter what they may say, people will not believe them. Their breath will always be foul. They will be snatched at by demons. Being poor and degraded and enslaved by others, they will be emaciated from many illnesses, and will have nowhere to turn. When they approach others, they will be disdained. Even if they manage to get something, they will immediately lose it. Even if they study medicine and cure themselves according to the correct method, they will suffer from other illnesses again, and may even die. When they get sick, no one will tend to them, and even if they take the proper medicine, their pain will increase. Every hand will be turned against them, threatening them, pilfering and stealing from them. They will fall helplessly into this plight because of their transgressions. Such erring people will never see the Buddha, the King of Seers, preaching the Dharma and leading and inspiring people. Such people will always be born into difficult circumstances, crazed, unheeding, and unthinking. They will never hear the teaching. They will be born deaf and dumb, with defective faculties, for as many immeasurable kalpas as the sands of the Ganges River. Chapter 3. 75. Though they will always endy themselves in hell, they will feel as if they were playing in a pleasure garden. Although they are in other troubled states of being, they will feel as if they were in their own home. They will live among camels, mules, boars, and dogs. These are the results of their error in disparaging this sutra. If they are born as human beings, they will be deaf, blind, mute, impoverished, and decrepit. Such will be their adornments. They will have dropsy, gonorrhea, scabies, leprosy, and tummus. Such diseases as these will be their clothing. Their bodies will always be foul, lthy, and impure. Their deep attachment to false views about the self will cause their anger and passion to increase. Their sexual desires will be insatiable, with either birds or beasts as their objects. These are the results of their errors in disparaging this sutra. The Buddha said to Ruputra, if one were to explain the consequences of the errors of those who disparage this sutra, it would take more than a kalpa. For that reason I am now telling you never to expound this sutra to those who have little wisdom. You should teach it only to those people of sharp faculties, who are wise, learned, and understanding. The Lotus Sutra. 76. 16. Who have good memories and erudition, and are seeking the Buddha path. You should teach it to those who have seen hundreds of thousands of kois of Buddhas, who have planted good roots, and are resolute. Teach it to those who strive. Always practice compassion, and give unsparingly of their bodies and lives. You should teach it to those who are respectful, and devoid of hypocrisy, who are living alone, in mountains and valleys away from fools. O Raputra! You should teach it to those who have left their bad companions, and made friends with virtuous people. Teach it to the heirs of the Buddha, who have good conduct, are as pure as jewels, and who are seeking the Mahayana Sutras. You should teach it to those who are free of anger, honest, equable, always sympathetic to everyone, and who honor all the Buddhas. Teach it to the heirs of the Buddha, in the great assembly, who have pure thoughts, and who teach the Dharma without doubts, using various reasonings, illustrations, and explanations. You should teach it to those monks who, always and everywhere in search of the Dharma, seek the Omniscient One, to whom they joyfully press their palms together, touch their heads, and preserve only the Mahayana Sutras with pleasure. Chapter 3. 77. Who never preserve even a single verse of any other sutra. Teach it to those who seek this sutra as intently as they seek for the relics of the Buddha, who after obtaining it will accept it respectfully, with bowed heads, and will not seek any other sutra, and will never think about heretical scriptures. O Raputra! I say to you, I have described the characteristics of those who seek the Buddha path. Though a kalpa would not suffice to do so in full, you should teach the Lotus Sutra to those who are able to accept it. The Lotus Sutra. 78. 16b. Chapter 4. Willing acceptance. At that time the noble Subshti, Muktayana, Makyapa, and Morgalayana, having heard the unprecedented teaching from the Buddha, and the Bhagavat's prediction of Raputra's highest, complete enlightenment, were led with wonder and ecstatic joy. They immediately rose from their seats, straightened their garments, leaving their right shoulders bared, and touched their right knees to the ground. With rapt attention and with palms pressed together they bowed in veneration and, gazing at the Bhagavat's face, said to the Buddha, "We are the seniors of the Sangha, old and feeble. We considered ourselves to have attained nirvana and to be incapable of further seeking highest, complete enlightenment, so we did not do so. It has been a long time since the Bhagavat taught the Dharma in the past. Now we sit with weary bodies and only contemplate emptiness, signlessness, and wishlessness. Neither the Bodhisattva teaching, nor the carefree sporting with transcendent powers, nor the pure Buddha worlds, nor helping sentient beings attain enlightenment produced any eager desire in us. Why is this? Because the Bhagavat caused us to leave the triple world and to attain nirvana. But now we are old and feeble. We did not take even a single thought of pleasure in the Buddha's inspiration of the Bodhisattvas to highest, complete enlightenment. And now in the presence of the Buddha, we have heard the Avakas receive their prediction of highest, complete enlightenment, and we are very joyful to have obtained such an unprecedented experience. We never considered that we would suddenly be able to hear this marvelous teaching, and we are overjoyed that we have attained such great benefits, an immeasurable treasure which we attained, though unsought and unawitted. O Bhagavat. We now wish to give an illustration to clarify what we mean. Suppose there were a man who, when he was still a child, left his father and ran away. Living in another region for a long time, he passed the age of 10, 20, even 50 years. The older he got, the more impoverished. 79. The Lotus Sutra. He became. He went searching everywhere for food and clothing, and while he was wandering about, he started back by chance in the direction of his native country. From the RST, the father had looked for his son, but in vain. In the meantime, he had stayed in the city and become extremely wealthy, and now possessed uncountable treasures. The father's storehouses were all led to overflowing with gold, silver, lapis lazuli, coral, amber, crystal, and other such things. He had many servants, subordinates, and clerks, as well as innumerable elephants, horses, carriages, cows, and sheep. He profited through lending, and his trade with other countries was also great. Then the impoverished son, after wandering through many villages, from one country and city to another, nearly reached the city where his father lived. Although the father had constantly thought about the son from whom he had been separated for over 50 years, he nevertheless had spoken to no one about it. He brooded and grieved in his heart, thinking to himself, I have become old and feeble, and although I have many treasures, and storehouses led with gold, silver, and precious jewels, I have no son. When I die, my treasures will be scattered and lost for lack of some one to whom to entrust them. It was for this reason that he was always thinking anxiously about his son. He also thought, if I could get my son back and leave my fortune to him, I would be relieved and happy, and without further worry. O Bhagavat. At that time the impoverished son, who had been wandering about, taking odd jobs, by chance nearly reached his father's house. Standing at the side of the gate, he saw his father in the distance, sitting on the lion seat with his feet propped up on a jeweled stool, respectfully surrounded by many Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and householders. His body was adorned with pearl necklaces worth thousands of myriads. He was attended on both sides by clerks and servants holding whisker fans. Above was a jeweled canopy with various hanging o'ered banners. Perfume was sprinkled on the ground, which was strewn with a variety of beautiful flowers. There. 80. 16c. Chapter 4. Were rows of precious objects, and people were coming and going, buying and selling. With various trappings such as these, the father appeared very majestic indeed. The impoverished son, seeing his father wielding such great power, became terrified and regretted that he had ever come to that place. He thought to himself, he must be a king or of a similar rank. This is not a place where I can obtain things as a hired worker. It would certainly be better for me to go to a poor village, a place where I can use my ability and easily obtain clothing and food. If I stay here for very long, I will be seized and put to forced labor. Thinking this way, he quickly ate. At that time the wealthy man, sitting on the lion's seat, realized that he had seen his son and became extremely happy. He then thought, now there is someone to whom I can leave my fortune and treasures. I have been constantly thinking about my son but had no way to meet him, and now suddenly he has come. This is exactly what I wanted. Although I am old, I still yearn for him. The man immediately dispatched his attendants to chase his son and bring him back. Then the attendants quickly ran and overtook him. The impoverished son was frightened and cried out in fear. I did nothing wrong. Why are you seizing me? The attendants grabbed him more and forced him to return. Then the impoverished son thought, they have seized me even though I have done nothing wrong. I shall certainly be killed. He was so terrified that he collapsed unconscious on the ground. His father, seeing this from a distance, told the attendants, I don't need him. Don't force him to come. Pour cold water on his face and bring him to consciousness. Don't say anything more to him. 81. 17. The Lotus Sutra. What was the reason for this? The father knew that his son was of lowly aspiration, and that his own wealth and position would cause him problems. Although the father knew without doubt that the man was his son, he used skillful means and did not say to others, this is my son. The attendant then said to the son, you are free to go wherever you wish. Then the impoverished son, happy because he had never felt such relief, stood up and went to a poor village to seek for food and clothing. At that time, wanting to get his son back, the wealthy man employed skillful means and secretly dispatched 2 attendants of wretched and humble appearance. He said to them, approach the impoverished fellow and gently tell him that there is a place for him to work where he will be paid double. If he gives his assent, then bring him back to work. If he asks you what kind of work there is for him to do, tell him that he will be employed to sweep dung, and that both of you will work with him. Then the 2 attendants immediately went in search of the impoverished son. When they found him, they told him this. At that time he took his pay and immediately went to work sweeping dung. The father, seeing his son, felt pity and wondered what to do. Then one day, while looking through the window, he saw his son in the distance appear, emaciated and wretched, soiled with dung and dirt. The father took off his necklaces, any garments, and ornaments and put on torn, clothes. Covering himself with dirt and taking a dung sweeper in his right hand, he made himself look fearsome. He said to his workers, work hard and don't be lazy. Through this kind of skillful means he was able to approach his son. He spoke to him further saying, I want you to always work here. Don't go anywhere else and I will pay you more. There will be no difficulty in getting the things you need, like utensils, rice, noodles, salt, and vinegar. I also have an old servant. If you need him, I'll give him to you. Be at ease. I am just like your father, so don't worry about anything. Why am I doing this? 82. Chapter 4. 83. Because I am old and you are still young. Whenever you work, you are never lazy or sullen and never complain. I never see in you the bad qualities the other workers have. From now on you will be just like my own son. Then the wealthy man immediately addressed him as his child. At that time, even though the impoverished son rejoiced at being treated this way, he nevertheless still considered himself a humble employee. For this reason, his father let him continue to sweep dung for 20 years. At the end of this period of time, each had come to trust the other. Yet even though the son had free access to his father's house, he still lived in the same place as before. Obegavat. One day the wealthy man became ill and knew he was going to die before long. He said to the impoverished son, "This is what I have been thinking, and I want you to understand my intentions. I now have plenty of gold, silver, and precious treasures lining my storehouses. Get to know exactly how much is being taken in and out of them. Why do I want you to do this? Because you and I are one and the same. Take good care of our fortune and don't let it be lost." Then the impoverished son obeyed his instructions. Although he learned everything about the gold, silver, precious treasure, and the storehouses, he never wanted to take even the least amount. Nevertheless, he still lived in the same place as before and was still not able to get rid of his feeling of inferiority. After a short time had passed, the father knew that his son's mind had become composed, that his will had increased, and that he was ashamed of his former feelings. When the father was just on the verge of death, he ordered his son to meet the king, ministers, Kshatriyas, householders, and relatives, who had already assembled there. The father then declared, "This is my son, my own progeny. When we were in a certain city, he left me and ate. He wandered around for more than 50 years under going hardships. His original name is such and such, and my name is such and such. Long ago, when I was in that city, I worried and searched for him. At last and unexpectedly I met up with him. This is my true son, and I am, in truth, his father. All of the fortune I now possess." 17b. The Lotus Sutra belongs to my son. He already knows about our Nances. Obegavat. At that time the impoverished son, hearing what his father said, became extremely happy at having obtained such an unprecedented experience. Then he thought, "I never even considered receiving this, nevertheless, this treasure house has come into my possession, though unsought and unawitted." Obegavat. This very wealthy man is the Tathagata, and all of us are the heirs of the Buddha. The Tathagata has always said that we are his children. Because of the triple sufferings, Obegavat, we experienced pain, were confused, ignorant, and attached to inferior teachings in life after life. Today the Bhagavat has made us think about getting rid of the dung of foul laces regarding the reality of the world, and that, in this respect, we diligently strove to attain the nirvana only as one seeking a salary for a single day's labor. We had already attained it and were extremely happy and satisfied with it. We said to ourselves, because we have made diligent efforts to comprehend the Buddha's teaching, we have attained a great deal. But the Bhagavat had formerly perceived that we were attached to desires and content with lowly aspirations. While letting us be so, he did not explain that we were to have a portion of the treasure house of the Tathagata's wisdom and insight. Through the power of skillful means, the Bhagavat has taught the wisdom of the Tathagatas. Although we had attained nirvana from the Buddha as our salary for one day's labor, we thought we had attained much and did not seek the Mahayana. Furthermore, we have manifested and explained the wisdom of the Tathagata for the Bodhisattvas, but we ourselves had no aspirations regarding it. Why is this? The Buddha, knowing that we were content with lowly aspirations, taught us according to what is appropriate through the power of skillful means. But we did not know that we really were the heirs of the Buddha. Now we fully know that the Bhagavat is unstinting in regard to the wisdom of the Buddhas. What is the reason for this? We have actually been the 84. 17c. Chapter 4. Heirs of the Buddha from long ago, even though we only yearned for the inferior teaching. If we had yearned for the superior teaching, then the Buddha would have taught the teachings of the Mahayana to us. Yet, in this sutra he has taught only the single vehicle. Now, in the past the Buddha reviled the Avakas, those who yearned for the inferior teaching, in the presence of the Bodhisattvas, but actually the Buddha inspired them also with the Mahayana. That is why we say that, though we originally had no desire to seek the great treasure of the King of the Dharma, it has now come to us unsought and unawitted. We have all attained what we should attain as the heirs of the Buddha. Thereupon Makyapa, wanting to elaborate on the meaning of this, further spoke these verses. Today we have heard the Buddha's words, and we are joyful and ecstatic at having attained such an unprecedented experience. The Buddha has said that the Avakas will be able to become Buddhas. The most magnificent jewels have been obtained without being sought or awaited. Suppose there were a young and inexperienced child who left his father and ran away to a distant country. He wandered around for more than 50 years, and his worried father looked for him everywhere. The father, exhausted from searching for him, remained in a city where he had a house built and enjoyed the desires of the senses. His family built up a vast wealth of much gold, silver, mother of pearl, agate, pearls, lapis lazuli, elephants, horses, cows, sheep, oats, carriages, peasants, servants, and other employees. He earned interest through loans and deposits, and had buyers and sellers throughout all the other regions. 85. The Lotus Sutra. He was surrounded by thousands of myriads of kois of people who held him in awe, always loved by the king, and deeply respected by the subjects and powerful families. There were many people coming and going on different business. He was thus extremely wealthy and very powerful. And yet as he grew older, he increasingly worried about his son. Day and night he thought, "Soon I will die. My foolish son has abandoned me. For over 50 years. What should I do with the various goods in my treasure houses?" At that time the impoverished son was going from town to town, from one country to another, seeking food and clothing. Sometimes he obtained them, and sometimes he did not. He was emaciated from hunger, and his body was covered with scabies. Through his wanderings, he gradually reached the city where his father lived, and, after having been employed at one place after another, finally ended up at his father's home. At that time the wealthy man was sitting within the gate. 86. 18. Chapter 4. On a lion seat, sheltered by a huge jewel-covered canopy. He was surrounded by his attendants and guarded by his men. Some were counting gold, silver, and jewels. And some were settling the nances, while others were keeping the accounts. The impoverished son saw his father, who was extremely wealthy and dignified. He wondered if this man were a king, or someone of equal rank. He became intimidated, and wondered why he had gone there. He thought to himself, "If I stay here for long, I will be harassed and coerced into working." Thinking this, he ran away, in search of a poor village, where he could end employment. At that time the wealthy man, who was sitting on the lion's seat, saw his son in the distance. Though he recognized him, he told no one, but sent his attendants to pursue him and bring him back. The impoverished son was terrified, cried out, and collapsed on the ground, in confusion, thinking, "Since this man has seized me, I shall certainly be killed. In vain did I come here, in search of food and clothing." The wealthy man knew that his son's thoughts, 87. The Lotus Sutra, were humble and foolish, and that he would not believe what he said, nor believe that he was his father. Then, using skillful means, he dispatched other men, with squint eyes, of small stature, and little dignity, saying to them, "Tell him, we will employ you to sweep dung, at double your wages." When he heard this, the impoverished son was overjoyed, and returned to sweep dung and clean houses. The wealthy man constantly watched his son through the window and thought that his son was foolish, and willingly did menial things. Then the wealthy man put on torn and lthy clothes, and, holding a dung sweeper, went out to his son. He approached his son through this skillful means, and said to him, "Work hard. I have already increased your wages, and given you more balm for your feet, given you sufficient food, and warm, thick mats." He further advised him, saying sternly, "You should work diligently." 88. Chapter 4. Then he gently added, "I will treat you like my son." The wealthy man, being wise, gradually gave him freedom of the house, and, after 20 years had passed, let him become involved in the family business. He showed him the gold, silver, pearls, and crystal, and made him learn about all aspects of the nances. Yet the impoverished son still lived in a thatched hut outside the gate, and considered himself poor, thinking that these things were not his own. The father knew that his son was gradually becoming more noble, and, wanting to give him his fortune, he assembled the king, ministers, Kshatriyas, householders, and relatives. He informed this great assembly, saying, "This is my son. He left me and stayed away for 50 years. 20 years have already passed since I saw my son return here. Long ago I lost my son in a certain city, and, after wandering around in search of him, I ended up staying here. I entrust to him all the houses and men that I possess. They are all at his disposal." The son thought. 89. 18b. The Lotus Sutra. Long ago I was poor and of lowly aspiration. Now at my father's place, I have obtained an immense fortune. Of such things as precious jewels and houses, I am overjoyed at having obtained. Such an unprecedented experience. The Buddha is also like this. He knew that we yearned for the inferior teaching. So he never taught us that we should become Buddhas. Yet he did tell us that we had attained the stage of non-corruption, that we had achieved the inferior vehicle, and that we were the disciples of the Aveka vehicle. The Buddha told us to teach that those who practiced the highest path would be able to become Buddhas. Accepting the Buddha's teaching, we explained the highest path for the great Bodhisattvas, using various explanations and illustrations, and many figures of speech. The heirs of the Buddha heard the teachings from us, contemplated day and night, and practiced diligently. The Buddhas instantly made their predictions saying, "You will all be able to become Buddhas in the future." We have explained the essence of the treasured teaching of the Buddhas only for the sake of the Bodhisattvas, but did not expound it for ourselves. Just as the impoverished son, who, after approaching his father, 90. Chapter 4, learned of various things, yet did not want them. So, although we explained the treasure house of the teaching of the Buddhas, we never aspired to it. We thought that we had ourselves attained nirvana, and considered this enough. We understood only this, and did not think there was anything else. Even if we heard about the pure Buddha lands, and leading and inspiring sentient beings, we never rejoiced in it. Why is this? Because although we thought thus, every existence is quiescent, neither produced nor extinguished, neither large nor small, incorrupted and unconditioned. We felt no eagerness. For days and nights we neither craved for, nor were attached to the wisdom of the Buddhas. Neither did we aspire to it. Furthermore, we ourselves thought, with regard to the Dharma itself, that this was the ultimate goal. After practicing the teaching of emptiness day and night, we were able to shake off the suffering of the triple world, and, bearing our last bodies, abided in the nirvana with residue. We were led and inspired by the Buddhas, so that our attainment of the path was not in vain. 91. 18c. The Lotus Sutra. And we have already been able to pass on the bonnets we received from the Buddha, although we have expounded the teaching of the Bodhisattvas to the heirs of the Buddha, to seek the Buddha path. We never longed for this teaching, because he knew our minds. The leader turned away from us. At rst he did not arouse our zeal with the explanation that there exists real truth in the teaching, just as the wealthy man, who, knowing that his son was of lowly aspiration, broadened his son's mind using the power of skillful means, and only then entrusted his entire fortune to him. The Buddha is also exactly like this. He has manifested marvelous things, but perceiving that we were content with lowly aspirations, he brought control to our minds using the power of skillful means, and only then taught us the great wisdom. Thus today we have obtained an unprecedented experience. The fact that we have now spontaneously obtained what we had not longed for is just like the impoverished son, who obtained innumerable jewels. O Bhagavat! We have now obtained the path and its fruit, and have obtained pure sight into the incorruptible Dharma. 92. Chapter 4. For a long while we have maintained the pure conduct of the Buddha. Today for the RST time, we have obtained the results. For a long time we have practiced the pure path of discipline and integrity, based on the teaching of the Dharma King. And now we have attained the supreme fruit of non-corruption. We are now real Avakas, and cause everyone to hear the words Buddha path. We are now real Arhats and shall be revered among the Devas, humans, Mras, and Brahmas, in all the worlds. The Bhagavat, the great benefactor, benefits us with marvelous things by his inspiration and compassion. Who can repay him for it? Even in immeasurable koyas of kalpas, even if one were to serve him with one's hands and feet, bow one's head in reverence, and give all kinds of offerings, one could not repay him. Even if one were to bear him on one's head and shoulders, out of deep respect for as many kalpas as there are sands in the Ganges river, one could not repay him. Or even if one were to honor him with delicious food, uncountable jeweled garments, beddings, various medicines, famed sandalwood from Mount Oxhead, and various precious jewels. 93. The Lotus Sutra. Or by building temples, spreading jeweled clothing and other such things, for as many kalpas as there are sands in the Ganges river, one could not repay him. The Buddhas have marvelous, immeasurable, limitless, inconceivable great transcendent powers. They are the kings of the Dharma, without depravities and unconditioned. They are patient in all matters, for the sake of the humble ones. They teach the common people, who are attached to tangible things, according to what is appropriate to them. All of the Buddhas having attained complete mastery over the Dharma, perceive the various desires and intentions of sentient beings and explain the teachings with innumerable illustrations, according to what is appropriate to them, judging from the roots of good merit that sentient beings have planted in former lives. The Buddhas perceive who are mature and who are not. Considering this in various ways, and understanding the distinctions completely, the Buddhas teach the single path, explaining it as three, in accordance with what is appropriate. 94. 19. 95. Chapter V. Herbs. Thereupon the Bhagavat addressed Makyapa and other great disciples, saying, Splendid! Splendid! O Kyapa! You have skillfully explained the real merit of the Tathagata. It is exactly as you have said. The Tathagata has immeasurable, unlimited, and incalculable merits. Thus even in a period of immeasurable koyas of kalpas you will never fully be able to explain all of his merits. O Kyapa! You should know that the Tathagata is the king of all the teaching. What he teaches is never false. He explains all the teaching using his wisdom and skillful means, and what he teaches leads everyone to the stage of omniscience. The Tathagata perceives the goal of all teachings and knows the underlying mental disposition of all sentient beings, perceiving all with no obstructions. He completely understands all teachings and displays omniscience to all sentient beings. O Kyapa! Suppose in the great manifold cosmos there are mountains, rivers, valleys, and plains where many kinds of grasses, trees, shrubs, and Herbs of different names and colors grow. Dense clouds thoroughly cover this great manifold cosmos, and rain falls at the same time everywhere, moist, tending the small, medium, and large roots, stems, branches, and leaves of all the grasses, trees, shrubs, and herbs. The sizes of all the trees depend on whether their capacities are superior, mediocre, or inferior, and the rain falling from the same cloud makes them grow according to the nature of their various seeds. Flowers blossom in the same place, and fruit ripens in the same place, moistened by the same rain, yet there are differences among these grasses and trees. O Kyapa! You should know that the Tathagata is exactly like this. He appears in this world like a great overspreading cloud. His great voice resounds over the Devas, humans, and Asuras in the world, just as the great cloud awfully covers the great manifold cosmos. He declares to the assembly. 19b. The Lotus Sutra. I am the Tathagata, Arhat, completely enlightened, perfect in knowledge and conduct, well departed, knower of the world, unsurpassed, tamer of humans, teacher of devas and humans, Buddha, Bhikkhu. Vat. I set free those who have not been freed. I enlighten those who have not been enlightened, and bring calm to those who have not been calmed. I cause those to obtain nirvana who have not yet obtained it. I am the one who knows the present and future worlds exactly as they are. I am the all-knower, the all-seer, the knower of the path, the one who discloses the path and explains it. All of you Devas, humans, and Asuras, come and listen to my teachings. At that time innumerable thousands of myriads of kois of sentient beings approach the Buddha and listen to his teaching. Then the Tathagata, perceiving the faculties of sentient beings, whether they are sharp or dull, diligent or idle, explains the teachings according to their capacities in a variety of immeasurable ways, gladdening and benefiting them all. Having heard his teaching, all of these beings are at peace in this world, and are born into a good existence in the future. Through this they will receive peace of mind and be able to hear the teaching. Having already heard the teaching, they will become free from obstructions and be able to gradually enter the path to the Dharma according to their capacities. Just like the great cloud that rains upon all the grasses, trees, shrubs, and herbs, whose seeds are watered and which grow according to their kapak. Itis, the Tathagata teaches the Dharma of one aspect and character, that is to say, the character of liberation, dispassion, and cessation, which ultimately leads to omniscience. Those sentient beings who hear, hold, and recite the teachings of the Tathagata and practice it accordingly will nevertheless not perceive the merit that they have obtained. Why is this? Only the Tathagata knows the seed, character, disposition, and capacity of sentient beings. Only he knows what they contemplate, think, and practice, how they contemplate, think, and practice, what teachings they contemplate, think, and practice, and what teaching they obtain. Through what teaching? Only the Tathagata exactly perceives and knows, without obstructions, the various states in which sentient beings reside. 96. 19c. Chapter V. 97. It is just like the grasses, trees, shrubs, and herbs that do not know their own natures, whether they are superior, mediocre, or inferior. Yet the Tathagata Gate knows the teachings of one aspect and character, the character of liberation, dispassion, cessation, complete nirvana, and eternal tranquility, which ultimately leads to emptiness. The Buddha knows this and perceives the aspirations of sentient beings. For this reason, in order to protect them, he does not immediately teach omniscience. O Kyapa! It is a rare thing that all of you know that the Tathagata teaches according to your capacities and that you believe and accept it. Why is this? Because the Dharma taught by all the Buddha Bhagavats, according to what is appropriate to sentient beings, is difficult to understand and difficult to know. Thereupon the Bhagavat, wanting to elaborate on the meaning of this, further spoke these verses. The King of the Dharma, the destroyer of delusive existence, appears in the world, and keeping in mind the aspirations of sentient beings, teaches the Dharma in various ways, according to the wishes of sentient beings. The Tathagata is greatly distinguished, and his wisdom is profound. He has been silent for a long time, and intentionally has not taught the essential in haste. Those who are wise will be well convinced when they hear it. Those who are not wise will have doubts, and remain confused for a long time. That is why, O Kyapa, the Tathagata teaches according to the capacities of sentient beings, and enables them to attain the correct perspective by using various illustrations. O Kyapa, you should know the Lotus Sutra, that it is as if a great cloud arises in the world and covers everything. This beneficent cloud contains moisture and bright lightning ashes from it. The sound of its thunder shakes the earth afar and gladdens the people. It conceals the sun and cools the earth. The spreading cloud hangs so low, as if it could be touched. Everywhere, equal and immeasurable. The rain pours down and moistens the earth. Grasses, herbs, large and small trees, all kinds of crops, seedlings, sugarcane, and grapes, growing in the depths of the mountains, in rivers and in precipitous valleys, are all watered and completely nourished by the rain. The dry earth is moistened everywhere, and the herbs and trees grow up thickly. Out of this cloud the same rain waters these grasses, trees, and shrubs, each according to their capacities. All the trees, small, medium, or large, are able to grow in accordance with their capacities. The luster and colors of the roots, stems, branches, leaves, and oars are all freshened by the same rain. Each of these, although receiving the same moisture, reaches a greater or lesser size, in accordance with their different dispositions, characteristics, and natures. The Buddha is exactly like this. He appears in the world as a great cloud. 98. 20. Chapter V. 99. Which covers everything universally. Once appearing in this world, he illuminates and explains the essence of the teachings for the Sake of sentient beings. The great seer, the Bhagavat, expounds this to the assembly of all the devas and humans. I am the Tathagata, the best of humans. I appear in the world to nourish sentient beings. Just as the great cloud moistens all the withered trees, I cause everyone to be rid of suffering and attain ease of heart, worldly happiness, and the joy of nirvana. So, devas and humans, listen carefully. Come, all of you, and look at the highest one. I am the Bhagavat. No one is equal to me. I appear in this world to bring peace of mind to sentient beings, and to teach the Dharma of immortality to the great assembly. This Dharma has a single ava of liberation and nirvana. I expound its meaning with the same subtle voice, always making the Mahayana the subject of my illustrations. I see everywhere, and regard all as equal. I have no feelings of like or dislike. For me there is no this or that. Nor do I have either love or hate. I have no attachments and make no distinctions. And so always teach the Dharma equally to all. And teach the same thing to one person. The Lotus Sutra. As I teach to everyone else, I always teach the Dharma and nothing else. Going or coming, sitting or standing, I never tire of satisfying the world. Just like the rain that gives nourishment universally, I tirelessly pour down the rain of the Dharma, equally on those who are noble or humble, superior or inferior, who keep or break the precepts, who have good or bad conduct, right or wrong views, sharp or dull faculties, according to their power to understand. All sentient beings who hear my teaching dwell in various stages. Those living among humans, devas, noble emperors, Sakra, and Brahma kings, are like the small herbs. Those who know the incorruptible Dharma, who are able to attain nirvana, have the 6 transcendent powers, and have attained the 3 sciences. Those who live alone in mountain forests, always practicing meditation, and who attain the enlightenment of the Pratyekabuddhas, are like the medium-sized herbs. Those who seek the stage of the Bhagavat, thinking that they will become Buddhas, and practice persistence and meditation, are like the large herbs, the heirs of the Buddhas, who concentrate on the path of the Buddha, who always cultivate compassion within themselves, and know innately without a doubt that they will become Buddhas, are like the small trees. 100. Chapter V. 101. Those who are comfortable with transcendent powers, who turn the irreversible wheel of the Dharma, and save innumerable hundreds of thousands of koyas of sentient beings, are the Bodhisattvas, who are like the large trees. The Buddha's equal teaching is like the rain of one ava. The sentient beings accept it according to their different capacities, just as the grasses and trees each differently absorb the rain. The Buddha reveals the single teaching with illustrations, using skillful means, and explains it with various explanations. And yet it is just a drop in the ocean compared to the Buddha's wisdom. I pour down the rain of the Dharma, filling the world, and the sentient beings practice the Dharma of one ava, according to their capacities, just as the shrubs, herbs, and trees flourish in accordance with their capacities, reaching either a greater or lesser size. The teaching of the Buddhas is always of one ava, and fills the entire world. Anyone who practices it little by little obtains the fruit of the path. The Avakas and Pratyekabuddhas, living in mountain forests, who, in their last bodies, hear the Dharma and attain its fruit, are just like the nourishing herbs. 20b. The Lotus Sutra. The Bodhisattvas who are in wisdom, who completely understand the triple world, and seek the highest vehicle, are just like the nourishing small trees. Those who abide in meditation attain transcendent powers. Listen to the teaching regarding the emptiness of every existence with great joy, and save sentient beings by emitting innumerable rays of light, are just like the nourishing large trees. In this way, O Kyapa, the Dharma that the Buddha teaches is just like the great cloud that enriches human hours with the rain of one hour, so that each attains its fruits. O Kyapa, you should know that I reveal the Buddha path using various explanations and illustrations, and that this is my skillful means. All of the Buddhas are just like this. I will now teach the highest truth for your sake. There are no Avakas who attain nirvana. What you practice is the Bodhisattva path. And if you practice step by step, you will all become Buddhas. 102. Chapter 6. Prediction. At that time, after the Bhagavat had spoken these verses, he addressed the great assembly, proclaiming, "This disciple of mine, Makyapa, in the future will be able to meet 300 myriads of kois of Buddha Bhagavats to whom he will pay homage, respect, veneration, and praise, and he will extensively expound the immeasurable great teachings of these Buddhas. In his last body he will become a Buddha called Ramaprabsa, a Tath Gate, Arat, completely enlightened, perfect in knowledge and conduct. Well departed, knower of the world, unsurpassed, tamer of humans, teacher of devas and humans, Buddha, Bhagavat. His world will be called Avabsapapta, in the Kalpa called Maviha. The lifespan of this Buddha will be 12 intermediate kalpas. The true Dharma will last in the world for 20 intermediate kalpas, and the semblance Dharma will also last for 20 intermediate kalpas. His world will be adorned and there will be no dirt, shards, thorns, excrement, or other impurities. The earth will be level without irregularities, hollows, or hills. The earth will be made of lapis lazuli with jewel trees in rows. Golden cords will line the borders of these roads, which will be scattered with precious ores, and everywhere will be pure. In his world there will be immeasurable thousands of kois of Bodhi Sattvas as well as innumerable Avakas. All malice will be far removed, and even though Mra and his minions will be there, they will all protect the Buddha Dharma. Thereupon the Bhagavat, wanting to explain the meaning of this verse, spoke these verses. I tell you, O monks, that I see with the Buddha eye, that Kyapa in the future will become a Buddha. 103. 20c. The Lotus Sutra. After innumerable kalpas have passed, in the future he will meet and pay homage